8 minutes after 2 o'clock, the second and final hour of 7:02 afternoons with me, Relebogile Mabotja. But I'm not alone. I have my two hosts that are joining me today, Gerard and Khanya, who have been really a part of this awesome youth takeover. Make sure you stay tuned as we have the upside of failure, because we're going to close off the conversation just talking about youth issues together with Zulaikha, who herself is not just a speaker and a two-time best-selling author and a student, but she also is a human rights activist. And I think it is super important that we close off Youth Month with a bang. 011 8830702, SMS us 31702, tweet at Relebogile M at Radio 702 using the hashtag 702 afternoons, and the WhatsApp line 072 702 1702.
702.
The upside of failure.
Proof that a setback can lead to a step forward.
The upside of failure, as we do on a Friday. And today we are joined by the phenomenal Zulaikha Patel, international speaker, human rights activist, two-time best-selling author, and an LLB student. How are you doing, my girl? Can you just pull your mic down to your face? There we go. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Firstly, I'm so sad I couldn't make your book launch, but I did send the person you really wanted, which was my son.
Yes, because you were actually his plus one.
I was his. You know, people must just be real and say, look, we actually don't want you, we want the kid. Firstly, I have to just say, we went to the same high school, and that is actually how you and I first got connected. Is reaching out as an old girl, trying to just say, you know, how can we assist? How can we support? And fast forward now, you are way out of high school, and I'm just so ecstatic that the photo of you with the big fro and your fist in the air actually translated to your life. It wasn't just in inverted commas. It wasn't a performance for the moment. It was something that was fully within you. So when we say activist, we're not using it in the sense of somebody who tweets, you know, cancel this or I hate this. She is actively living it. I want to just kick off about the LLB pod. Girl, respect! I dropped out after 1.5 years because I chose money and said I'll pay the lawyers instead. What made you decide to go into law?
So in terms of growing up, I never really had conversations around what I wanted to study. It was the typical, I think I want to be a doctor, you know, I think I want to be a doctor. And I also grew up with parents that were, I could call them old parents. Like my parents were not young when they were raising me. So there's
Were
only
you the
five.
surprise? Were you the surprise baby?
No, the planned.
Oh, I love that.
So there's only 5 things that make sense, right?
Yes.
Can be a teacher, an accountant, an engineer, a lawyer, or a doctor.
Yes, yes.
Everything else is a hobby. So we never had much conversations. Then I get to school. I'm terrible at mathematics, but I excel in everything else. I'm just terrible. So then that doctor thing goes out the window. And then I start finding myself. I start really understanding my experiences of racism and understanding what's happening in the country. And I start getting the sense of I really want to contribute to changing the world, right? Fast forward, I become thrusted into activism. And I'm thrusted into activism during high school. I get to the end of high school and I actually apply for a bachelor in political science and philosophy.
Ooh.
Then I do 1.5 years, and it's the political science. I'm like, this is not interesting because I found some of this in books before, books that I've read. I don't actually feel challenged. And then secondly, I'm failing philosophy. I enjoy reading it.
Really?
I enjoy reading it, but I can't be tested on it. I would literally pass on the dot, like 50, 51, 50, 51.
Girl, at least you didn't say 33.
Then, no, it's been there at some point.
Aish.
Then, whilst I'm doing this, I'm like, no, man, this doesn't make sense. What I need to be doing now, because I've already built a name for myself and a career, and I'm already thrusted into what I see myself doing. what's the best professional skill that would further elevate what I'm already doing? Because I was like, no, I need a professional skill that's actually just going to elevate the career I'm already building. And what better way to elevate being in civil society activism than pairing it with the law, because those all intersect. You can't think of politics without thinking about the law. The law is influenced by the politics, and law also influences how politics plays out. And there's an intersection with all three of those things. They don't exist without each other. So then I changed my degree to a LLB. And yeah, now I'm nearly done.
I almost feel like you're going to specialize. Do you think that's something you would do, or you feel like LLB and you kind of would be done and then you would start sort of pushing into the different spaces with your activism work?
So in terms of specializing, I would. And most people are thinking human rights, but actually not. It would be part of the things that I would be interested in practice, but I don't think I would pursue a master's in human rights. See, studying the law is very different when you talk about it. International law, constitutional law, those have been modules that have dribbled me. They're not the simplest.
Also just the sheer amount of workload, the amount of reading.
And the understanding of it, right? So I never necessarily enjoyed any of those. And I actually leaned into other facets of the law. So I'm leaning in between. I definitely do see myself doing a master's, applying for a master's next year. I'm just on the fence between a master's in cyber law and this is because something happened to me that suddenly made me passionate about cyber law and e-commerce law, or a master's in environmental law. Because I am someone that, amongst my hobbies and interests, conservation is one of them. So I definitely would specialize, but I think the LLB has also, to be honest, shown me some serious flames. So there might be a moment to breathe in between, then do the masters, then after that pursue going into the bar. But in between all of those, moments to breathe.
And I think it's quite important because your career started quite early. You started the movement at the age of 13 in regards to the racism at Pretoria High School for girls. You are now 22, going on 23. And it only dawned on me as I'm talking to you, I matriculated the year you were born. How wild is that? Because I was like, 2003, that was my matric year.
2002.
Is your birth year. Okay. Almost so you were now crawling, basically, and getting ready to walk as I was matriculating. When you grew up in the home that you did, what was your understanding of what failure is? Especially now you are literally going through somebody telling you it's a pass or a fail.
My understanding of failure, so I witnessed failure I was raised by a serial entrepreneur. My dad was a serial entrepreneur. He has had many different businesses. When I tell people, my dad once sold hair at some point, people don't even believe me
Really?
at all.
Did he sell your hair? Because you've got the richest, fullest hair that I've ever seen.
Not my hair, but he pursued many different businesses in his time. I think when I was in grade 1, he tried selling shoes, handbags, and then he then went on to imports and exports and actually supplying stores. And then when I was maybe in grade 3, that's when he started selling hair. Then he became a supplier of Indian hair, the wigs. And I've seen him fail many times. I've seen him do things, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. And one thing that my dad taught me, which is something that can be quoted from Islam, from the Quran, is that Allah doesn't burden a soul beyond what it can bear. The challenges that we face in life, the failure that we face in life, is us being sharpened for what we're truly destined for. And in that understanding that God won't burden you with what your soul cannot bear, it shifts perspective that these challenges that you experience and the failure that you experience is actually a sharpening moment, and it's a moment that had to happen as part of your story, because you would not be at the finish line without that. You needed to go through that in order to be sharpened. So just having that understanding that failure is something that naturally happens. It actually has to happen. And you sometimes might end up even more successful from failure, experiencing failure, is what shaped my understanding of failure, that it's okay. It's completely okay.
What's so wild? I'm having goosebumps. Just this morning, I posted on my TikTok about seeing somebody share something that said, it is a blessing to be in pain. It is a blessing to forgive. And I had to meditate and really think about what that meant. And the reference that I made was, because everything is light and dark, if you don't feel pain, it means you will not feel joy. So if you don't experience failure, it means you will not experience success, because they do go hand in hand. So as you're speaking, I'm like, were you listening to me? Were you in my bedroom hiding? This is so wild as I was posting that. And I think it is so powerful that you learned that at such an early age, that it is necessary. And the beauty is that not only did you learn from your dad that it's okay, but you got to see the resilience that comes with how fast and how quickly you bounce back. We need to take a break. When we come back, we continue with the upside of failure. 23 minutes after 2 o'clock, we continue with the upside of failure as we are chatting to Zulaikha Patel. We've been speaking about not just her experience and what she's learned about failure, but her journey with studies. And I'm so glad that you are quite open about that, because that is the reality for many young people. You think you want to do something, you experience it, you're like, nah, not for me. And you are able to show that you can actually start again. Now, to come back to this concept of failure, do you, in some ways, I mean, you have 2 books, My Coily Crowny Hair and Brave Like Me, which are best-selling books in South Africa. You have been named on so many global lists, your BBC 100 Woman, your Young Activist Summit, being a laureate there, being a Kofi Annan change maker. The list is quite extensive. Do you ever have moments where you feel like the standard that you're being held to from such a young age is a standard that is difficult to hold yourself to? Like when you are alone, does it marinate? Does it feel like, oh yeah, I've done really well? Or does it feel like, oh my gosh, I've still got so much work to do?
So we spoke about my understanding of failure coming from seeing my dad fail. But me seeing my dad fail and build resilience, it didn't immediately anchor as this is a lesson that I should apply in my own life, because I was a perfectionist growing up. I was the kid that got perfect grades. The kid that did absolutely nothing, well-behaved, poised. And then I get to high school and I'm suddenly someone that can be termed a rebel, but a rebel with a good cause still. And now I start building this career and this name. It took long for me to really understand that, yes, I can have this life lesson I've seen and see others fail, but that lesson needs to be taken and applied in my own life as well. It took long. I only started to understand the depth of what I had shared in adulthood, coming into adulthood. I only started to understand that, and I only started to understand that in my own life, it is okay for me as well to fail, and I need to be okay with that, right? And having grown up in the media with hyper visibility, right? Everyone has an opinion about you. Anyone gets to say whatever they want to say about you. Some people think you should have done this way, or some people have also planned a path for you that you had nothing to do with what they planned for you or charted for you, right? And those standards exist out there, right? And they'll never go away, because unfortunately right now my life is in the public eye, and it's going to continue to be in the public eye, and there's nothing I can do about that. But at the end of the day, as a person, you need to take the step of changing how you speak to yourself. those standards will always exist. Everyone, even your own parents, have a certain way in which they believe you should be living your life, or a standard they uphold you to. Maybe you shouldn't be failing at this, right? Maybe you shouldn't fail at this. Everybody has only known me from the outside and only known me as Zulaikha Patel, the activist, and these many titles that I come with. And nobody has known that at the end of the day, I'm a young woman with depth and experiences that have given me depth as well. And people don't know that. So when you walk through your own experiences, you need to carve your own inner voice to understand that these standards that people have set for you out there should not impact how you go on about life. And it's taken me a while to get to that. For a long time, it did affect me how I was perceived externally. It affected me for a very long time, where I was so ashamed of certain things. Maybe I felt like, why am I failing at this? Why am I not able to do this? Imagine if everyone found out that I'm failing at this, right? And maybe at times, if I look back, I would be 16 and I'd be wondering, why can't I get it together? Why don't I have this together? You know, everybody knows who I am and holds me to a really high standard, up until I went through many seasons of failure, and seasons of failure in adulthood that shaped resilience in me, where I then took a decision to then change how I speak to myself internally, where I've now gotten to a point where I'm a young woman who's in good standing with herself. People's external standards, or how high people hold me out there, don't actually affect me that much anymore, because at the end of the day, I know that outside of what the world has carried me as and the titles I've been given, at the core of all of that, I am Zulaikha Patel. Before all these titles, I am Zulaikha Patel. I am somebody that is walking their own path and charting their own path. And the standards that everybody upholds me to should not affect me that much. I should uphold my own standards for myself, because in the end, really, we're only in competition with our previous selves.
And I think it is so beautiful that you were able to figure that out at the age. And I would say, you know, going on 40, the lesson will keep coming in different ways. And sometimes you think you've learned something, because I've gone through that, where I'm like, okay, I've overcome this one. And then later I'll be failing at something in a similar realm. And I'll be like, how? Manje? And then my therapist would remind me, remember, life is seasonal. There's certain things that when your capacities are limited, you will go back to old habits. You will go back to using the tools that you used to have in your toolbox that no longer are required. You know, you'll have that old screwdriver, the old tin opener, but those cannot solve your current problems. So I hope that in your journey, you absolutely continue to come back to that message, because life will test you. It will demonstrate to you how much growth you still have to go through. And sometimes we can only learn through mistakes in certain things. We are going to head over to the news, but we continue with the upside of failure in a different kind of way. When we come back, it's 2:30, 20 minutes to 3 o'clock. We're continuing on the upside of failure, but this will be a different kind as we're wrapping up Youth Month. And we have our guest that continues with us, Zulaikha Patel, who is an author. Please go get her adorable children's books. They are so fantastic. And I just love the themes outside of loving your coily and curly hair. It will also give you an opportunity to have a conversation with your kids about what being brave is all about. And I think it is such a great opportunity. Find them in multiple South African languages at all good bookstores and even online. But we don't just have Zulaikha who is with us. We continue with our youth that have taken over my show in the roles of host. And we are still with Gerard and Khanya. 011-883-0702, the WhatsApp line 072-702-1702. We are now going to jump into what I will call on the spot, the upside of failure, the youth speak Ting, ting, ting. So you, as hosts, get a moment to switch out of being host mode and just being young people. Now, I want to kick off by asking all of you a question. It was on Youth Day. We had a conversation to ask all the listeners. In South Africa, youth is defined as 15 years to 35 years old. And I was asking all the listeners, should that be relooked to be in line with the UN, which I think says 14 to 24 or 23, and globally it also is in with that range of around 25. Now, many listeners had varying views. Some said, nope, it needs to be higher because the opportunities for youth, if you're 40, you're still quite young and you still need opportunities. The unemployment is high. And you had others who said, guys, 35 is actually old. Bring it down. Make sure that the youth opportunities actually are there for young people. That you shouldn't have a 23-year-old competing with a 35-year-old. So let me start with you, Zulaikha, the guest of guests. What do you think? Do you think, and for context, the reason that it was lined up this way when it was put together as the definition was because of our history and the fact that there are many people who did not get certain opportunities. So it is currently at that age range, but it could change at some point as we slowly build more time between our history and where we are today.
Well, I think it doesn't need to change. It can be kept at 15 to 35. I don't see a problem with that because I also think we focus so much on minute issues rather than actually focusing on what are the actual obstacles to opportunity instead of focusing on, oh, maybe we should change it from 15 and maybe make it till 25. Well, that's not going to realistically change the state of unemployment in the country. Addressing the obstacles is what will change it. So instead of focusing on maybe we need to shift the mark and not make it 35, we can rather focus it on grouping. Because obviously the issues that 15 to 19-year-olds are having are totally different from the issues that, let's say, 28 to 35 are having. And then the in-between, the early 20s and the mid-20s, the issues are totally different. So maybe focus on rather grouping the different types of youth, if I can call it that way, into different groups, like the teenagers, the early to mid-20s, the late 20s to the early 30s, and then the late let's say youth and Dala, the old youth.
I am old youth. I absolutely love that term. Thank you so much for saying that. I absolutely love
the old youth.
Yes.
Because I think that if we can focus rather on what are the actual obstacles, such as in terms of interviews, when people put out interviews looking for young candidates and then say you need to have perhaps, let's say, 8 years of experience. Looking at the current state of young people with unemployment and the opportunities afforded to young people, it's not possible. You're not going to get maybe one in how many will have that 8 years experience. Addressing such obstacles is what actually needs to change, not changing the mark and moving it and saying, no, but you can't have people in their 30s part of the youth. Addressing the actual obstacles and addressing the challenges to reaching opportunities based on the different intersections, race, where you live, because South Africa is still geospatially divided.
Yes.
Youth in townships, youth in urban areas, youth in rural communities.
So I actually think that's a good opportunity for me to go to Khanya. You are 14 years old. You are in high school. What are some of the challenges that you would say teenagers are facing today? And to provide context, you go to a phenomenal school, St. Stadians, but you're not far off. You know, you're not like 7 degrees away from knowing a person who goes to a secondary school and maybe is 3 years older than the grade that they should be in, that they are in. What would you share are some of the problems that teenagers are facing today?
I'd say the biggest problem is because this world, we're now getting into a new era of technology. You know, there's things like AI, Instagram, TikTok. So I'd say the biggest challenge would be social media pressure. There is constant comparison. There is, cancel culture. There's cyberbullying. There's just so much, and I don't really think it's fair nowadays. There's just this pressure to have a perfect life online, even if things are tough off of social media.
I got you. Gerard,
Yeah.
you fall into the early 20s, recently became a full adult because yes, we have the 18, but 21 is when you get the key. What would you say your young 20s and 20-year-olds, some of the challenges that they are facing? And I know you interact with many young people because you're at tucks with people from all walks of life.
Indeed. I believe the hardest but the challenge that us as 20-year-olds or young in our 20s face are work. Like, we are trying to study and getting a degree, or not all of us, but some of us.
Yes.
And everybody has this thought of you need a degree to be able to become something, or you need this to do this. And that is what's being brought down on us so badly. We are pressured to know exactly what we're going to be doing in the next 5 years. And 20-year-olds, I mean, it sounds old. You sound as if you know exactly what's happening in the government. I mean, they expect you to do that. And if you think about it, 2 years ago, I was doing my matric certificate. I almost have no idea. I only opened my Trueworth account the other day, and I'm so proud of myself. And I bought myself a jacket on credit to build my credibility.
Yes.
And that I only found out last year. What is credit? I mean, we don't even learn it in schools, which are very important points to face in the challenge of being an adult and becoming a young adult, and not being able to know what you have to do to become one. How do you be one? How do you be?
How are you?
How are you able to be a young adult if you
Yes.
have no knowledge or information about how to be one?
Oh.
And it's so hard to face it.
And you're touching on one of the biggest topics that we will talk about when we come back, which is, is the education system in South Africa actually preparing young people for life? So you just opened your first account, you bought yourself a jacket on credit. Wait until SARS is knocking at your door when we come back. 9 minutes to 3 o'clock, the upside of failure. We are together with Zulaikha Patel, but we also have with us our youth, my co-hosts Gerard and Khanya. 011-883-0702. The WhatsApp line 072-702-1702. And get your messages in, particularly if you want to ask the young people in studio about what some of the things are that they are experiencing. There's a message that says, thank you so much, Zulaikha, because as Black people, we are far behind with a lot of things given our history. Because of that, we remain disadvantaged from most opportunities. So they should leave the age group as it is from 15 to 35. And we do know we have such a long way to go, because if you think about my generation, what do you say, the old youth? The old youth.
There's also another term. What is it? Young lions that don't roar anymore.
I'll take that one. So for us, if my peers or even somebody Zulaikha's age that has a child, and you now have a child and you don't have a job, that child is already still disadvantaged, especially if you don't come from a home where they're able to provide for you. So we still have a few generations to break the cycles, and it takes time. It takes a very long time. I want to ask about the education system. I'm going to go to you quickly, Gerard. I mean, you touched on the fact that you feel ill-prepared for real life things. Now, the reason why this is such a big deal, not everybody has a parent who knows how to read and write and is articulate. Not everybody has a parent who has access to information about mental health and is able to take, if the school contacts them to say, hey, your child has bipolar disorder, for them to even know what that means and what to do about it. If you were to name one thing that you wish had been implemented in school, be it high school, wherever, that now you're seeing happening in real life, what would the one thing be that you say, I wish they taught us this at school?
I would say money laundering. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Listen, we all want to learn.
No, I'm joking.
Yes.
I would say how to work with your money, and in the sense of impulse purchases
Yes.
and necessary purchases. I
Yes.
believe there was someone that talked about how to budget your money and knowing when to buy what. But everybody always uses their money as quick as possible when they are young. In my first year, I had a little pay working a side job for my church, and I already had something that I was paying off, but the rest of my money, I saw it as, let me spend it. Let me go there. I have money to get this now, and I get this. And now I'm thinking, well, I'm actually a little sad about that, because now I could have put that in a savings account,
Yes.
maybe, that is fixed, and I cannot take the money out of that. And then I can get interest on that and build up more money on top of my money, which people don't understand. We have accounting in schools. Well, you have to choose it, actually. You have
Yes.
to choose that
From
subject
grade 10.
from
Yeah.
grade 10. So it's not everybody that has accounting. And accounting does learn you about interest, but business-wise. Accounting is never personal. And to become an accountant, you don't even have to have accounting in school, which is really, really weird to me.
Okay, Khanya, and I'm very mindful of time for you. I mean, you are in school at the moment. What would you say is in school that is helping you, that you wish all schools would have? Because you're in a private, quite elite, I would say we're talking the top 5% of the country. What do you guys have at your school that you say, I wish everybody could have this at their school?
That would be us having to hand in our phones every morning. I feel like social media, sometimes we're giving this freedom in high school, but some of us don't know how to use it wisely.
Yes.
Right? Now, instead of socializing and bonding and creating relationships, we rather just be on our phones and make connections with other people online, and just don't communicate safely. So handing in our phones, and it just really forces us to bond with each other, create relationships, because we're only going to be children once.
Yep, I love it. Zulaikha, as we wrap up, the final question that I ask every Upside of Failure guest, and you have about a minute. What would you share with all the listeners you have learned about failure?
One thing I've learned about failure can be self-inflicted. Failure can be self-inflicted. I look back at moments, two things actually, where I was responsible for my own failure at gaining an opportunity because I self-sabotaged. I self-sabotaged once or twice because I felt like I've got an opportunity that's been handed to me. I didn't have to go through any obstacles for this opportunity. And I feel like I'm too young for the opportunity. Or what qualifies me to have this opportunity? What qualifies me for this role?
Or undeserving.
I've always existed in spaces ever since the inception of my activism career, where I've been the youngest person in the room, the titles, the youngest to gain this. And there were times where I got a really good opportunity, but I self-sabotaged because I felt like I was not qualified for that opportunity. And secondly, I think another thing I'd share about failure being self-inflicted is not being able to take care of your mental health. I wish when I was younger, I took mental health more seriously because it's invisible, but it can literally cripple you. And I only find myself doing the work now, and I'm undoing so many years, at least 10 years of trauma or anxiety or depression. I'm undoing that now.
I know everybody listening is thinking, my goodness, we could listen to these young people for hours, and I wish we could have them all for hours. But thank you so much.
Spend your afternoon
With Relebogile Mabotja.
on 702.
Let's walk the talk.